Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and it is finally Friday evening, so I can actually sit back and start looking at which games I'm going to be playing this weekend. I can't decide if I'm going the PS3 route or if I want to get back into some PS2, but to be honest with you folks, I've really been having a hankering for Sega Saturn, and not just any Sega Saturn games, but my Sega Saturn import games. My Sega Saturn import collection is extremely important to me because it is where I have most of my shoot 'em up games, my shmups. As you can see, I'm a huge fan of the shmup genre, and I've got a few of them here that I'm very really tempted to get into. I might even get into some of these tonight, but I've really been wanting to play some Hyper Duel, for sure. That's one that I've been wanting to play, as well as some Batsugan. So I may go the Saturn route. The more I look at it, the more it seems like I'm leaning in that direction. And while I've got the Saturn hooked up, I feel like I'm gonna go a little bit arcade mode this weekend. I'm feeling like going old school with my fighting games and getting in a little bit of Marvel superheroes versus Street Fighter action. This was huge for me back in the day as a kid, and so I think I'm gonna go this route. So I'm gonna start taking some of these games out that I'll be playing on the Sega Saturn. And for those of you who know, you cannot get through some of these games without using an action replay. You can't even boot these games up on your Sega Saturn without an action replay. But what I've come to discover is that games like Marvel vs. Street Fighter, along with like even X-Men vs. Street Fighter, which is another one that I'll probably get into this weekend. Yeah, I'm definitely going fighter mode for sure. It's Friday, it's action time. But the thing is with those is that for a lot of those, you need the 4 megabit like RAM card. So I am going to set that to the side. Even when I'm playing, like sometimes this will work when I put these games in on my US Saturn, but you know, sometimes they just don't work at all, and I have to break out my import Saturn in order to play these games without them crashing or anything like that. So I have a few of these carts. These RAM carts just help me with some of those fighters, because when you're playing, like I said, when you're playing these classic fighters, you really need that 4 megabit RAM card. So I'm going to be playing some X-Men versus Street Fighter, some Marvel superheroes versus Street Fighter. And then again, I'm not going to be getting into Skullfang this weekend. No Cyberbots, but definitely going to do some Batsugan. For all of you who don't know, man, I mean, if you're wanting to expand your collection and, you know, you're trying to think about like what other consoles or systems you can get into, do not sleep on Sega Saturn imports, because some of the best action games are on the Sega Saturn. Batsugan is one of them. So definitely gonna be playing some of that. And last but not least, ooh, totally forgot. Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to play some Radiant Silvergun for sure. So Radiant Silvergun will definitely have to tackle some of that. And then last but not least, Hyper Duel. I love this game. I love this game. When I first got this game, I would play it over and over and over again. I think the furthest I got though was like level 5 or 6. It's tough, man. Games like these just start to get tough. Look, I even cracked the case. Look at that big old crack over there. That's how much I've played this game. So this is what's on my docket for tonight and probably tomorrow night. I'll be getting into these shooters and fighters. These are just some of my favorite import games to play. Marvel Superheroes is just a classic, and you really gotta love it, man. You really gotta love just that arcade era, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight, like the arcade era. So for those of you who don't know, like if you didn't grow up in the 80s and the 90s, we used to have these things called arcade stores. And on a night like tonight, like a Friday night, man, I mean, you could walk into almost any arcade that had like Street Fighter 2, because we could even go back to the Street Fighter 2 days, but like Street Fighter 2, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom. And those arcades would be jam-packed with dudes on the controls going at it for hours, spending quarter after quarter after quarter trying to rack up the wins or unlock new characters. I remember when Marvel vs. Capcom 2 first came out, like the arcade, and it made its way to my local arcade store. And up to that point, everything had been Marvel vs. Capcom. And if for those of you who know, in Marvel vs. Capcom, you had your three top buttons, which were your light, medium, and heavy punch. Then you had your three bottom buttons, which is your light, medium, and heavy kick. And then to call out the helper, because in Marvel vs. Capcom, not only were you able to pick two characters, but then right after you picked your two characters, or during each level, they did like this randomized selection of special helpers that you could use. And it included everything from like Universal Soldier. There was like a number of folks that you could select, like characters that could be your helper. And it's funny because some of those characters became playable in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. But the button schematics on Marvel vs. Capcom 1 was more old school because it followed the light, heavy, and medium attack method. And I learned to play Marvel vs. Capcom using Spider-Man. And for those of you who know, to get someone up in the air, to get them up in the air for an air combo, you would have to do his light, medium, and heavy kick in sequential order. Then, light punch, light kick, heavy, medium punch, medium kick, heavy punch, and then a web swing or another type of move to finish off the air combo. Well, and you guys might be like, man, Marvel vs. Capcom, what is he talking about? So this is Marvel vs. Capcom. So this is what we played a ton every day, right? And you only got two characters. And look, oh shoot, yeah. So look, even Colossus was a character that was only a helper in Capcom 1, but then he became playable in Capcom 2. So I remember we played this, and then when they finally brought Capcom 2 to the arcade, right? So when this showed up at the arcade, the button schematics were completely different. So there was no more like a light, there wasn't a button dedicated to the medium punch and medium kick anymore. In order to execute a medium punch, you would have to tap the light punch twice, but it had to connect. Well, no, I don't think it needed to connect because you were still able to get out a medium punch, but you had to tap the light button twice. And the reason being was that your heavy punch and your heavy kick, when pressed together, would allow you to switch your character. That was how you switch your character in the arcade. And so I remember air combos becoming a lot easier in Capcom 2 than they were in Marvel vs. Capcom 1. And I just remember like the hype around Capcom 2 because when the arcade first got there, it didn't come with all the characters. Like even in the arcade, like when you first got the arcade, what you would think that because it's the arcade version, it would come with all the characters, but no, we would have to play the game. So every day for like the first few months that the arcade was in the store, we were unlocking characters left and right. Like we just unlock characters, and every time a new character got unlocked, it was, everybody was trying to figure out how to use them and who would be the best and so on and so forth. And just, these games take me back to that generation, that arcade generation. And it's sad because I don't think like my kids, the next generation, is ever really going to know what that feels like the hype of being in an arcade, the hype of, just your closest friends around you in this, small space, everybody locked in on one arcade machine, everybody sweating, everybody biting their fingernails, trying to see who's going to win, who's going to take over, and those were good times. And I guess you could say, right, like in today's time, that what's replaced the arcades are the tournaments that we see on TV. Competitive gaming has gotten a lot more refined. We have leagues now. Some of these things are televised. You have Street Fighter 2 tournaments that are televised. You have, Smash Bros tournaments that are global. And that's the cool part that I guess this generation gets to enjoy. But man, there's nothing like those arcade days, man. Back in the day, just you, your buddies on a Friday night, everybody from the neighborhood coming over to the arcade store to see who's going to dominate. And then afterwards, everybody going and getting a slice of pizza from the corner store or going to the Chinese spot. Maybe that was just a New York thing, but after you go in, everybody hitting up the Chinese spot, getting some 4 chicken wings with pork fried rice. Come on, man. You guys know what I'm talking about. Don't act like you know about don't act like you don't know about those 4 chicken wings and pork fried rice. And those were the days. Those are definitely the days. So, sorry if I took you on too much of a nostalgia run, but that's a huge part of the reason why I collect games like this, man, because they take me back to that time. So hopefully you're digging something out of the crate that's going to make you feel good. Hopefully you're booting up a console or booting up a disc or putting in a cartridge that's going to transport you back to that time when you were carefree. Because shoot, after a hard work week of just grinding away, sometimes you just want to forget all of the stress of the work week and just lose yourself in some nostalgia. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because I'd rather lose myself in nostalgia than in something that'll damage me mentally or physically. So these are the times where video games can be that piece. So hey, thank you for sticking around. If you stuck around this long, thanks for sticking around for the trip down memory lane. It's a relaxed, rainy Friday evening where I'm at, and wherever you're at, you have a good evening. Enjoy it with the friends and family, and I'll be back tomorrow. Don't know if I'm doing any game hunting this week, to be honest with you. I don't know if I'm going to be out in the field this weekend. Just not really feeling that game hunting energy, This feels like a weekend to play games versus hunting them. But you guys let me know down in the comments. What are you going to be getting into this weekend? Are you going to be doing any game hunting? Are you on the prowl? Or is this going to be a weekend where you kind of kick back and relax? It is Mother's Day weekend. So for any mothers out there who might be watching the channel, all 3.2% of you, happy Mother's Day. Enjoy the day. And if you've got a mother in your life, if you're going to be celebrating Mother's Day, do so. Enjoy, and let's appreciate our moms. That's enough jabbering and blabbering for me. It's the Y2K Collector. Have a good evening.